suppose we will start that process now with the first game of the weekend, as it has been all tournament long. Italy operating as the curtain raiser for the weekend, and it finished Italy 10 points, Ireland 48. Ireland breaking their O, getting to a 1-2 record, which was expected. Nice to see them running in 6 tries. And a few more if you discount a few of the others as well that were scrubbed off. But it was some improvements. I suppose we'll start from Ireland's point of view in terms of just what we saw from them, because they did win the game, obviously. And what we saw was some improvements with ball in hand. There was a little bit more scope for them to attack, a little bit more variation. Nice to see a few players hitting lines more dynamically, looking for the offload as well as looking for the support line. The caveat to attach, as it always is, as it was with England v Italy, and as it ever will be, is just how much did we really learn? Because a lot of that front football was just winning every collision in every circumstance.
There was definitely more organisation to it. There was also a bit more zip, a noticeable bit more zip.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think it's a tough one from a personnel point of view looking forward for Ireland. There's always going to be an argument for Conor Murray from a box kicking point of view, from a solidity point of view. Like, what use is pretty attacking rugby when you can't exit? I hear you on all of that. But I definitely, at the end of the day, I just don't accept that argument. I don't think that Ireland is functioning with Conor Murray at 9, because the zip that comes from there is the only thing that can help this attack break down defences. Because that combined with some good carrying and then some good running off the back of it, and I definitely think Sexton was a huge help there. But it is the zip that initiates it. It's successful carry, quick ball, and I think with both Gibson Park and Casey,
you saw much improvement there. And Casey didn't slow anything down by coming in. In fact, quick taps and goes, and it was nice to see, because Ireland needs to be playing with a bit more zip in all circumstances, and against Italy and Rome as well, it just makes perfect sense.
But I mean, going forward, I think that they have to stick with that, because it helps the offense function, and then you find different ways to exit. You get the benefits that what Murray's bringing in what be it in defence or in his kicking game, get it elsewhere on the pitch. But at the base of the ruck, he's not doing the basic thing that Ireland have needed him to do, which is just to move the ball quickly and accurately. I think Gibson Park and Casey did a great job there. Casey's someone now, he made his debut on the weekend. There's been a lot of exciting talk. I mean, you had Sexton comparing him to Wilkinson for his work rate, saying
that's impressive.
Maybe this is the crack that Casey is trying to impress Johnny, and he's come in, so he's just he's in the squad now, so he's I'm not going home. They can't drop me if I never go home. I'll just work. Or maybe he's just like that. He's a machine.
Could be. But he looks a very good young player, is what he does.
I think he looks very, very good. I think they're not to get too excited about a young guy, but there's a necessity that Ireland need from a backline point of view, that in terms of building an offense and gaining an impetus. Sometimes you need a spark from a personnel point of view to help you get there, and that's kind of what Ireland have been missing in recent times. The last real spark that was injected into that backline was probably Stockdale when he came in a few years back. But since then it's been very, very stable and sort of not going anywhere.
Functional and at times solid, but other times less so, and overall less clinical than other backlines. That's kind of it.
Indeed. And sometimes all that needs is the injection of just one catalyst, one great player, and I think that could be Casey. I think he's got. I love him attributally. I love what I'm hearing from a work rate point of view. Seems like he has a great head on his shoulders, a lot of raw talent, and a capacity to move the ball quickly and see things from a perspective. I mean, you look at France's turnaround since the last number of years. I think you can pretty much marry it to Antoine Dupont's rising. And it's not to say that it wouldn't have happened without Dupont, but I think he was potentially a catalyst for the quick tempo rugby that they're now playing and that they're now bringing to test level, because they had this class player, and then the question was, well, how do you use him? And the answer with Dupont was, well, you have to play with zip, you have to work defences, you have to give him options and potential to move the ball and use all of his weapons, rather than being slow and kicking, because that wouldn't suit Dupont at all.
Indeed.
And Casey's a similar one, where if this guy can come out and stake a claim as unequivocally the best 9 in Ireland, which I think he does if he takes the Munster jersey, which he's not far away from doing, and if he takes the Munster jersey by the end of the season and is I'm unequivocally Ireland's best scrum half at the moment, it will force Ireland to play a game that suits him a little better. Indeed. And could prove a catalyst for better quality attacking rugby. And then I'm really excited about him.
100%. And then a few others as well. We saw Billy Burns come in, but not for Sexton as well. Saw him at 12, which is something you've been begging for quite a long. We've all been begging for quite a long time as well. 2 dual distributors. in Ireland meant we could get wider much quicker, and we did very instantaneously just with the change. Nice to see that, because there is capacity for it, of course, and we have a lot of other useful players. And the other thing is, like, Sexton obviously signing on for another year is nice, but it will need to find the heir apparent, and if the heirs apparent aren't top quality, then maybe having the 10 be your only distributor in the back line is not the best option. If you 100%. Have two young guys in 10 who are fighting for a 10 jersey but could also play 10-12, not a bad option. You see Australia do that kind of tactic all the time, and it gets them a little wider. But yeah, broadly there were a few nice tries. Like, Ringrose took the opening score nicely. Eventually it did take 10 minutes of kind of narrow bludgeoning, and before eventually it kind of zipped a little wider of the ruck. Still one pass, but Ringrose took it kind of neatly. I thought the second try from Hugo Keenan, though, was probably my favourite in terms of just...
Don't worry.
Where Ringrose kind of lists to the left and draws in defenders as he does, but gets the hands free, and Keenan has the wherewithal to run a very nice line from fullback and hit that ball, and it goes clean through. And Ireland definitely need a lot more of that, as well as the tempo. They just need guys running positive attacking lines and penetrative lines, and
100%. It'll make night and day difference. And that was definitely a theme of the day, with the sharp movement of the ball. As you say, it was based on forward carries. Yeah. And the other thing is that it wasn't done with that much shape. There's a bit more shape. There's a few screens in there.
We had the little Kelleher pull back to Sexton to Larmour, get the hands free for Connors, and that was a nice little finish to a nice try. But again, as you said,
Sexton came in and injected the pace after like 4 or 5 paces of bludgeon. It was a nice try. I just don't know if it's a try that would have been there against anyone else.
Well, that's always the question. Same could be said of the Ringrose one, but it's like you can only play what's in front of you, and it's just encouraging to see players kind of doing a little bit more shape, but also looking for that offload. Larmour's little draw and give to put Connors through untouched was nice.
It is great. They're showing great skills, which in some cases isn't the question. Like, in terms of the skills they showed, like, still all of the long passes were Johnny Sexton.
That's true.
All of the skip passes.
Even the skip, the last one for Earls' kind of flourishing try was a nice one, but it came from Sexton.
The ones with zip. If there is a concern, my concern is just that they're still a level behind what, like, Wales and England are doing. Like, if you look at some of Wales's and England's tries, like even the Ben Young's try for England, where they're just moving it from side to side, there's loads of deception, constant runners, even Anthony Watson's as well.
Same idea.
And we'll talk about those as well. But it came from like 4 or 5 phases from a set piece, working the defence this way and that, constant runners, heads up rugby within a really tight system, moving the ball between forward and back distributors, hitting lines, picking great options, and finding tries really efficiently and brilliantly
against top teams.
England did that to Wales, and Wales did that to England.
The question mark is as to whether Ireland would do that to either of them.
That's my kind of thought, is that what Ireland are doing is still very heads up. It's very one phase at a time. Players are running off each other, but it's not. There isn't that like sharp. We're flowing to this side with a load of runners. We're flowing to that side. We have pods here, and here, and they're all options and all distributors and all have deceptive capability. And then the passing from 10 and 12 like is crisp and quality. Like, that's what England have. Wales, to some extent, like, actually they worked in Josh Adams as a distributor at times. They kind of had the same issue with their centres. But by and large, they haven't. It was just really an accident, a quirk of the week that was in it that had Davis and North in there, which I don't think they'll do going forward. But from an Ireland point of view, 10 and 12, or 12 and 13 don't really have that zippy pass that Sexton has or any of the 10s have. Yeah. And as you say, Billy Burns as an option in there is interesting, and it
makes them all options. It brings in your Ben Healy's, your other Burns, your Frawley's if he's ever fit. You're kind of got these guys if they're not going to be an elite 10, which none of them really have put their hands up to be, and Joey Carberry coming back as well if he can get a run of fitness. All of them could be options from 12.
That's an example to me, though, in my mind, of something that they just do against Italy.
Yeah, exactly. This is the way it's a question mark.
They're bringing the 10 into 12. Like, in my mind, if Robbie Henshaw goes down, there's just no way they're going to bring a 10 in or a second distributor to play 12. Even if Henshaw goes down injured, they're going to put in Bundyaki or Chris Farrell, and likewise if Gary Ringrose goes down. So for me, it's all kind of moot, because the plan clearly isn't for a Sexton Burns axis. That was just something they threw on against Italy to get a little wider.
It was nice to see it, and it should be a thought, because
again, off the bench should be a thought. If Henshaw Ringrose doesn't work,
because a lot of time Henshaw Ringrose can both be said to be playing a good game. And I think the weekend was another example. They can both hustle really well and make a lot of positive kind of individual plays, but on balance the whole attack doesn't work and they only end up scoring one try. So yeah, a bit more of options. It was just good to see it on the pitch in action for them. And then a few other little notes as well. Just a minor touch on Sexton as well, who was 7 from 7 from the tee, which I can't remember ever seeing recently, including a few tricky touchline ones. And the hamstring held up. It was 80 minutes of rugby from Sexton, which I also can't remember seeing very recently. Seems to be better temperatures could be a factor in kind of an old tired muscle, but also weaker defences.
Just no adversity.
Yeah.
I mean, we'll get on to
no
it
shots
presently, but adversity would be the explanation for that one.
Yeah, and I dare say the warm weather is probably good. Like a lot of players do that as well. He has a kind of a recurring hamstring thing that tightens up, and if you're doing winter rugby in Ireland, it's obviously 20 odd degrees in Rome is just a nicer temperature for the body to be operating at, and he seemed to have no issue. Yeah. So that was encouraging from a purely selfish Sexton point of view. And then the other note I had was that his reaction in post match. I don't know if everyone saw it because we were watching just on our domestic kind of coverage of it, but as he was informed in the post match chat that it was Romain Poit in the TMO, he let out a knowing chuckle of like, oh, that's what happened to those tries. We were wondering what those inexplicable tries being scrubbed off were. Oh, Romain. Yeah, no, it was just funny to see because we're not the only ones scratching our heads at that.
I can't imagine the players and Romain Poit. He's had one or two clangers in his time.
Indeed.
Listen, I suppose we'll move on to Italy.
We will.
Nothing else.
Yeah, no, I have nothing else on Ireland. It was a good win, 48 points. Nice to get back in the winning books. And sure, the last time they played, they won, which we haven't been able to say for a few weeks. So well done Ireland. From Italy's point of view, I can say less well done about that. It was an ugly game.
I'm sure you were less disappointed in Italy than I was.
Oh, because I was expecting it.
Yeah, I had hopes based on what they were doing that they were going to show something, and it was, from my point of view, it was probably maybe their least encouraging performance since Franco Smith came in.
Possibly,
just because they were building against France and England, which are two teams they didn't have much of a shout against. But for that Garbisi intercept, you think they're in that England game against France. They put together some nice sequences in the first half to threaten them. And then they come into this game against a team with a vulnerable defence in the wide channels and a clunky offence coming into the game.
Yeah.
And then they show up and they get like 5-6 clean possessions in the first half, in Ireland's half, from around the 10 metre, and just never move it at all.
Yeah.
I know they're not like the same physically as Ireland, but it's just hard to understand the lack of impetus in their approach in this game. Yeah. Like, it's hard not to be critical. I know they're a level down, and it feels strange being critical of them at all because to an extent they're just in a competition, a division or two above their level.
Yeah.
But they just showed up with no impetus. For me, the game they had the best chance in.
Yeah.
And I thought that their attack looked cleaner than Ireland's going into the game, so I suspected they'd get outside. And once or twice in the first half they did, and there was space. Meyer could run up, and if there was someone just off him, all of those back rowers, Negri in the wide channels, whenever they got into a little bit of space, they looked dangerous. And if people were picking runs off them, they could have busted holes and found some tries.
And that was where the one try that they did get was on the stroke of half time. And it was over, but it was a positive rate from Garbisi again, taking it to the line, riding the contact nicely, getting the offload through, and Meyer goes over.
He worked that attack nicely, and Ireland have been worked by good offences already a good few times this year. Yeah. And just to see that the first, I think, 2 or 3 possessions they got right when we say is the time when they need to strike.
Yeah, 100%.
And they were off nine, Garbisi you talk about didn't touch the ball.
No.
They never got go for it,
and they were without Varney as well, which should have meant it was all Garbisi.
Yeah,
but that was
Varney hurt because he could. The guy who was in was it Palazzani starting. I think it actually might have been the other English lad who was starting. I'll just find that out now for a moment. But it was just very slow off the base, all off 9. And then
running into the bigger, stronger pack,
losing contacts to Ireland's good narrow defence, and Will Connors comes in and has a positive impact for Ireland, no question about it.
Yeah, but, as did Tyburn, they all had a field day as well in those kinds of you're playing right into Ireland's hands. We give out to Ireland for being stupid by kind of going to Twickenham and running into their narrow defence instead of testing them wide. The same can be said of Italy here on a few levels. You have Ireland coming to town, arguably your best chance of a win because Scotland. you know, like traditionally Scotland are your best chance, but Scotland look a better team than Ireland this year, and you have them at home, you know, this kind of idea, and they just to see them as flat as they were was disappointing. It is always a factor that they do just get wearied and worn down and ragged the longer tournaments go on, barring and occasionally getting up for a Scotland game.
It's Callum Braley who's at 9. I was just looking that up,
yeah.
But the other English lad in the squad. But I'm sorry, like
it happens every year though.
Yeah,
I refuse to be surprised by it when
they had a 2-week gap, and then the first quarter they showed no impetus. Not the second quarter, not like at the very first possession, like 4 minutes into the game. Like, I know it's tough to ship losses.
Yeah, that's it. Like, fatigue isn't physical fatigue. Fatigue is just kind of a mental drain that comes from losing every...
not doing anything.
No, just being weird.
Though, I mean,
well, what could explain is if you had a tough week, or if the guys just don't believe that anything that's being said to them for the 2 weeks they're preparing for Ireland is going to result in any positive impetus at all. That's why I was remembering back being very proud of Conor O'Shea when he came up with that one wonderful game where the Rookgate thing happened, where in Twickenham, where they'd obviously focused on this one thing that they were going to do to England because they felt they could get away with it, because it was like
quirk in the laws.
A quirk in the laws they were trying to exploit. And you'd never seen an Italy team for a first half of rugby look so focused on just doing that. Like, it was just dialed into one specific thing, and they did it really well, and all of them were kind of together and cohesive. Yeah. It's a tough task for a coach to do that, and kind of galvanise the squad around one idea that gets them focused. Whereas if you go in with a gap week talking about how, you know, we're going to move a bit of Ireland around, we're going to try blah blah blah, going to try blah blah blah, you're going to carry a hell of a lot more Meyer and Negri, even though I know you've got smashed for 2 weeks in a row and we keep losing these games, we're still going to trust you to break these guys down. Like, there's a potential for the guys to just not believe a word of that and then kind of stagger into the game going and I understand there are grievances about Franco Smith that I hear from Italian rugby fans. I get that, like, a few years ago at least they were felt a little bit tougher, even though they were less accurate, but there are, like, the points of positivity. The young halfbacks, Varney wasn't available for this one, but have them moving it a bit better and passing a bit nicer. But, like, again, they were getting praise in week 1 for the way they approached the game against France, and you were thinking the way they approached the game against France was terrible. They set up a shootout in Rome, which they're always going to lose, but it's lovely for the neutral.
They attacked well, but the mistakes they made were awful, and they lacked the streetwise ability to mind the game when need be and put the ball in the corners and manage the game. And that's where Cannon needs to really step up and mind the young halfbacks. He needs to be the experienced man and come in and take charge at times. Garbisi very much seems to be calling the plays by himself, and I think Cannon needs to come in sometimes and help him move the ball. But I'd like, just broadly speaking, it is frustrating for them, and I think that I'm kind of between two minds as to understanding, you know, they have a young team. They do. Right, it is what you say is true. Like, young halfbacks who are promising, an attack that might be building, you know, and then a genuine two monsters in Pelledri and Stain, who, if they can get them back, would be a game changer. Putting them into a high functioning offense, getting 1-on-1s in the wide channels. Maybe
putting one or two of them in lock as well, because their locks are 2-0 as well. You could keep Meyer and you could keep Negri in the team, and maybe getting Banda. Just pick all back rows if they're your only good players. But I mean, it's tough to see what the locks are doing.
The scrum is already in trouble though. I mean, that adds that dynamic. But I think they are missing those two guys. As good as Meyer and Negri have been, just they add a much more playmaking and powerful and dynamic sense of play. So there's potentially still scope for optimism, but I think by and large I don't see true competitiveness coming from Italy, and I just call the question as to, like, I don't want to be one of these guys who call for them out, but I think it's an open question as to whether the perpetual status quo with the Six Nations and Italy being in it and there being no promotion, relegation and no real other games for Italy, like, it's an open question as to whether it's doing them any good. It's obviously say again.
Well, financially, obviously, it's great for them, but, like, and there are angles of, like, get South Africa, if the Springboks join the Six Nations in 5 years' time, I don't think I would advocate for it being the Seven Nations. I would probably advocate for it staying the Six Nations, and for Italy maybe going down in that circumstance.
Does that maybe sink them?
That might sink them, but it puts them in the Rugby Europe Championship, where we see Georgia just romping on the other end of the spectrum. Georgia with very few competitive games at the other level, where they're just levels above these guys. Maybe a few of them duking it out in that competition. Maybe a path for promotion, relegation. Like, as you say, it's just an open question.
Which they never agree to.
No,
like, that's the problem. Is changing the status quo in rugby is like pulling teeth, and harder still, perhaps. In fact, definitely. But
you just need string in a door for a tooth.
Yeah, exactly. But it is a question as to whether it's the current status quo is right. Not to say that we can or should change it necessarily, but it's just not.
It's not working.
It's not working for Italy.
Italy
I don't know
now.
if they're getting better, honestly.
No.
They have a couple of nice young players, but they've kind of always had that. This time they're playing a wider attacking style with nothing in the tight.
Yeah.
Prior they had like a bit in the tight, but nothing out wide.
Yeah.
Do they have the player base
for
to marry
Franco
it?
Smith, who's obviously preaching something, but it's understandable frustration. Like, I can understand Italian rugby fans thinking we should be a bit more gritty. I understand the defence of the young team. I like the young halfbacks. I think there's strings of optimism, but it's just, you couple that with like the longest and most ridiculous losing record that could ever be established in international rugby, purely because they're playing in a competition that's beyond their means and they can't compete in. It doesn't do them any favours, doesn't do the competition any real favours, I would think, and ultimately it might be worth changing. Like, just at the end of round 3 now, I was looking at the league table and they're played 3, lost 3, points difference of minus 101, and it's like, you're looking at that going,
I don't like. I'm sad for it. I think the whole international structure. First of all, what we always say is that now we have a name for it, the Autumn Nations Cup.
Yes,
is that we need to do away with the autumn window to help these kind of teams out, because it doesn't just go for Italy. There's a gap between the tier 1 and tier 2 that we like to address. Bottom line,
indeed,
and sometimes unions are working for that and sometimes against it. But
the ideal section, we got a window to it last World Cup where there was that pool D, I think it was, where the pool with Uruguay in it, where actually for the first time in the history of the World Cup, every team in a pool got a win in that tournament. That had never happened before, and that's apart from the first one where there were only 4 teams per pool and fewer pools. I think that was the crack. But in the 5 team pool format, there's always just been tonkings dished out, and there's always a team there that's just also like in 20 years time, if World Rugby want to point at a success in terms of growth of the game, you're going to want to see the World Cup be much more competitive than that. You're going to want to see like all 20 teams going there with a realistic thought of getting out of the group, and then a fair few more teams going there with a realistic thought of going and launching a campaign for the World Cup. You can't have the same old
better tier 2 competition will have to be a driver of that, and I think that they were getting there in some ways with the Americas competitions and the Rugby Europe competitions.
And the coming force of Japan's league and Japan's show.
Japan are probably already into tier 1.
Oh, they are. But their league is contributing as well.
Yeah, but I think if broadly speaking, and for Italy as well, putting a November window in with competitive games instead of just unions arranging games between themselves, having a 3-game window and playing 3 games against the teams next to you in the world rankings, and then having promotion relegation
in that
so like whatever it would be, 4 teams or 3 teams,
4 teams, 3 games,
4 teams and 3 games, top 4 in the world, second 4, third 4, fourth 4, and then it would give
4, 6, 4,
it would give Italy
Italy
would start wherever they'd start Division 4. And then they'd have a chance against the likes of Tonga and Samoa to work on their game and see where they're good and see where they're bad, ahead of just playing teams who are blowing them away. And then slowly they could work their way up to a tougher division, and I just think the more competitive games is going to give these teams a better chance. It's going to make a better product for fans as well.
Yeah, indeed. And if you have there's a way to support that. The argument is like, oh, they'll get no eyeballs on that kind of thing. No one will care about Division 4 of the Autumn Nations Cup. Well, they will if they're a curtain raiser at Twickenham. If you have Fiji or whatever, Italy, Tonga in Division 4 before you have England All Blacks in Division 1, that's a potential thing to do.
You probably want to play it at home though, in a non-COVID situation.
In a non-COVID normal times, or you do all of whatever division America are in. That all happens in America, and they all go over there. There's scope to do it.
You could mix it up over a few weeks in the autumn, but I definitely think it would help a team like Italy. They
need more competitive fixtures, because again, there's a reason I keep saying they can't kick 3-pointers. There's no point in kicking 3-pointers, because again, this is another game where they scored their last points at the stroke of half time, and the second half they got nothing.
They can't have that.
I'd give advice to schoolboys for the same thing. If it was a schoolboy team against the Ireland rugby team, I'd be like, don't kick 3-pointers, just go for tries.
Go in the corner,
try and run around them before they hit you too hard, and then they'll hit you too hard and you won't be able to get around them too much longer. It's like it's men v boys a lot of the time watching them.
They don't need any more tonkings. They don't need to play the All Blacks in the autumn, for example. It's another pointless game.
It's silly. Despite the fact that the All Blacks might kind of think, what, only 48? We'll put 90 on them. That's where the All Blacks will think.
I don't doubt it. But it's a sad game for Italy. Definitely has me down on their their chances going forward.
Yeah, indeed. But the converse side of that is well done, Ireland. It's selfishly delighted to see Ireland score some tries. Delighted to see us back in the winning column. And yeah, out of Rome with a bonus point win, which is exactly what the doctor ordered. So,
100%, and a bit of impetus and a bit of momentum.
A chance to salvage a winning record, which is a tough thing to do after going 0-2. So they're still in the hunt for that.
100%.
Yeah, with that we will move on.
Indeed. Thank you for watching the Overlap Rugby podcast. If you enjoyed that video, please be sure to like and share with your friends. And if you'd like to hear more of what we have to say, please be sure to subscribe and click that bell so you get notified when we upload our videos. And please join the comment section as well. We like to get a fun conversation going here.